Hey, what's the deal? Miss your boy Tag from Pro Wrestling Tag. You know what I mean? As of this recording, it is 4:37 p.m., June 5th, 2025. You know, as I'm talking to y'all right now, there's a commercial that I fucking hate. You know what I'm saying? It's this shit right here. I don't know if y'all heard that shit, but it's the Sky Rizzy the Sky Rizzy commercial. Control is everything to me. I hate that shit. I fucking hate that commercial, yo. I can't stand it, God. I can't stand it. You know. So I wanted to make this video at first as a discussion video, but I'm like, you know what? Since I got nothing going on right now, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have nothing to do legitimately. Like, I'm bored. You know what I'm saying? I already did my art. You know what I mean? I already, prepare for cooking and everything. And I'm not going out until like 6:30 and shit, 6:30, 7 o'clock. I figured, you know what? Let me kill some time the best way I could with you awesome wrestling fans. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to come with this discussion. Hold on real quick. Yeah, sorry about that. You know what I mean? Like, I was going to say this, but I figured, you know what? Let me, do this for today. You know what I mean? Because again, I wanted to kill some time and such. And I'm bringing up a very interesting topic because I want to know what you guys think. So, of course, I bash the indies. I bash a lot of shit about the indies. I talk a lot of shit about the indies. Like, I have no filter when it comes down to the indies. None whatsoever. But I got, and I did say that, yes, I'd rather prefer, the big guys because that's exactly what pro wrestling is, is about. It's a big man sport. Like I said, WWE mostly looks for big men, right? Gimmicks and characters, right? And of course, if you can wrestle, great. But if you have all three, that's even better, right? All four. If you're not big, but you have a character, you have a gimmick and such, that's even better. You have charisma, that's even better, right? And I did say that, WWE looks for those and such, right? But they also look towards the indies, right? They definitely look towards the indies. And I noticed something, compared to, with wrestlers who WWE brought in and such compared to, the indies, right? A lot of wrestlers that you see that WWE brings in and such, compared to the indies. I'm talking about like people who they bring in who has a build and such, they have a build, they have a look and such. They burn out. They burn out on the business quickly. But a lot of the indie guys have tons of longevity. Don't y'all notice that? Don't y'all notice that? What made me want to prompt this video is it's a video from Wrestling with Andy. Shout out to him because he makes great content. If I find a video, I'm gonna post it up in the description. Right? He brought up about wrestlers who basically flamed out. Right? Who basically they flamed out the business, right? Flamed out basically meaning like they were only there for maybe about, I say, a good 10 years. And then they just left the business, right? For whatever reason, right? And we're talking about mostly wrestlers who, again, they have a build. Maybe they might have went to the independents, but they were not as successful as, the stars of the indies, right? The stars in the indies and also the stars of Japan and wrestle all around the world, right? And what I think it is the fact that some of them are not hungry. Some of them are not hungry. It's not like the 90s or the 80s where, people came in there just to get a quick buck, just to make some money and that's it. They didn't give a fuck about the business. Some people didn't even watch wrestling stuff. But remember what I did say, and I did make a video too, how, wrestlers who never liked wrestling, right? Wrestlers who became major superstars in the business, they never liked wrestling to begin with. They never liked wrestling growing up. One person, of course, we know is AJ Styles. AJ Styles never liked wrestling. he said he watched a little bit of it, but he never was a fan of it. You know what I mean? And of course, he went to try it, and bam. Remember, he was also an amateur wrestler, right? Sting, same exact thing, right? Sting, basically, his look, he had a bodybuilder look, everything, and, he did get training and such. And, they told him, this was easy work. This basically easy fucking work. Same thing with the Ultimate Warrior. Same thing with a lot of people, right, who were not fans of the business, right, growing up. They never liked it at all, right? But there was a shift. I noticed there was a shift in, I'm going to say, around the Attitude Era. Not that, no. It was still hot. Around the Ruthless Aggression Era. The Ruthless Aggression Era going towards the PG era, right? And when the indies came and such, right? Because the rise of the indies really started happening around the 2000s, right? And it's been there since. I've noticed something. I've noticed that a lot of the indie wrestlers that you see, right, that love the business, that had that hunger for the business, they still have a lot of longevity. Their names are still floated around as compared to, people who WWE or their scouts look for when it came down to amateur wrestling, bodybuilding, football players, and such, right? MMA fighters, basketball players and such, right? I mean, those times has changed, right? But in terms of that, because once NXT was developed and once the Performance Center was developed, that's when those attitudes started to completely change, right? And I'm going to give you some names that, to me, flamed out. And there are some wrestlers that actually flamed out for one reason or another, right? One name that comes into mind, right, is Ryback. Right? Ryback comes into mind. Let me drink some water. Hold on. Ryback comes into mind, right? Technically Ryback, was owning the business, I think, for about maybe, 12 years? 12 years before he got his complete big break. You know what I mean? In I think, 2012, 2013, when they compared him to Goldberg and shit. You know what I mean? Remember, he was part of the Nexus, but then also I think he was part of Tough Enough too. I think, right? Of course, we know why he flamed out. His attitude was just fucked up. Everything that happened in 2016, look what happened. What happened to Ryback since then, right? He's done podcasting. He doesn't really do shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's delusional, right? Let me see. Who else flamed out? Damian Sandow, right? Sandow was Aaron Stevens, then again, I'm not going to say he flamed out. You know what I'm saying? But I think that momentum was not there like how you think it would be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Damian Sandow was great, but I think, nothing really happened. After the whole missed out thing, nothing really happened. Nothing with him really happened. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he wound up in TNA. I think. Yeah, I forgot. I had to check because I remember he was in TNA. I remember he was in fucking TNA. You know what I mean? Let me see another one. Alex Riley. Look what happened to Alex Riley. Look what happened to him. You know what I'm saying? Another guy, right? Look what happened. Curtis Axel. But Curtis Axel, this was more of what WWE did. You know what I mean? You haven't really seen him like that since, right? Remember the Ascension? Connor and Victor? But again, same shit with Vince and such, right? Let me see who else. David Otunga. We all know why David Otunga was, was hired. Nobody's stupid. We all know why. Him. You know what I'm saying? Let me see other ones. Sin Cara, Adam Rose. Again, there was a lot. There was a whole lot that flamed the fuck out, right? And when I also mean flamed out, I mean they don't even they didn't wrestle in the indies to improve on their craft and everything else. Meanwhile, right, all the top stars from the indies, right, they wound up in, they wound up in thing. They wound up in, in WWE eventually, and they're still here. They're still fucking here. They're still here, right? Listen, if you are not part of a wrestling family, or if you are not, an indie guy, or like, or like you manage yourself into wrestling, you are not going to get far. And plus, you're going to flame out the business quick. You know what I mean? And I'm being very careful with my words because, yes, we have seen, or matter of fact, like I said, people who came from, it all changed with NXT. You know what I mean? It all changed with NXT. A lot of those guys really did not flame out. But we're talking about like the FCW guys. The FCW guys, the OVW guys and such, right? But this is mostly like what Vince gets. Look at Lars Sullivan. Lars Sullivan is another one, right? What the fuck happened to Lars Sullivan? What happened to him? What happened to No Way Jose? Remember No Way Jose? Remember him? What happened to him? You know what I'm saying? What the fuck happened to him? Again, there are names where you're like, damn, who else? Who else? Even with the women, it was bad because, Eva Marie. Come on, Eva Marie. Eve Torres. You know what I mean? Like, the women was worse. It was much worse. It definitely was much worse. And again, if you are not a person who is devoted to the business, right? You should not be there. You shouldn't be there. If you just want, those times has changed because now and I think I know the reason why. Because now it's a small man's game. You know what I mean? It's a small man's game now, and, they have to, cater to more of the smaller wrestlers and such, right? One person who I am a fan of, but before I even go there, let me just say this, right? Now I think the attitudes have changed. The attitudes have changed, where now these people work with, the best of them. They work with the indie guys to work on their craft and such. And I think it's great. That's what NXT was created for. For NXT guys and indie guys to work together and such. I mean, one person that comes to mind, and I'm glad that he's sticking to wrestling because I think this guy has a future, and I would love for this guy to come back at some point with WWE. I'm not sure if he's in TNA, but Sidney Hakim. Sidney Hakim is fucking great. He's fucking terrific. You know what I mean? He is fucking excellent at what he does. You know what I'm saying? And I think with him, to still keep it going and such, I think it's a great thing, But as I talk to y'all, I finally figured it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman is another one, and I'm not gonna say he fizzled out either. Even though he got his release, I'm not gonna say he fizzled out. But it almost seemed like he didn't really have a passion for pro wrestling and such like that. Because I mean, maybe he did, of course. I don't want to say that for sure, but remember, he was kind of disrespectful to the indies, right? Same thing with Baron Corbin. Same exact thing. So you see what I'm talking about, right? You see exactly where I'm getting at and such, But it is what it is. But like I said, I think the attitudes have changed because now, now people want to wrestle. They see the indies and shit like that, But let me know what you guys think in the comment section, you know what I mean? Because I will be making another video tonight for sure. So I'm going to definitely holler at y'all. Peace.